Thank you all for joining. Welcome to today's chat session. I believe everyone is doing well by God's grace. Since we started 2 weeks ago, we've been talking about the subject of fear. And for the past 2 weeks, we've discussed a whole lot of things concerning fear, especially as youth belonging to this generation. How has fear stopped us from pursuing certain things, or how has fear motivated us to pursue certain things? So today we are taking it from the angle of uh, distractions. How does fear, or how can fear serve as a distraction to us? Whether taking a class, whether starting a business, whether pursuing any kind of ambition or a goal that you have for yourself. How can fear stop you from that? How can fear distract you from that? So let's look at fear in the angle of serving as a distraction to us. The floor is open. Everyone is welcome. Let's have a conversation.
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. So I was saying that we looked at fear for the past 2 weeks. So today we kind of just want to look at fear from the point of view where can fear serve as a distraction to us. A lot of times people look at fear as something bad, but really fear also has certain advantages that we can look up to, or that we can use to motivate ourselves. So today we're looking at fear as in the case of how can fear serve as a distraction to us? How can fear prevent us from pursuing our ambitions, from starting a business, from taking a class? In general, how does fear distract us?
Well, I think that a lot of people, and definitely myself included, sometimes we're so afraid or we fear the idea of failure so much, failure, and then perhaps ridicule over that failure, even though it hasn't even happened yet. You don't know if you're going to fail, but you're so scared of that possibility that, as you were saying, you stop yourself from taking that first step, even of accomplishing whatever it is, whatever the goal is. So I definitely think that fear of failing, and then in some situations maybe being ridiculed or made fun of because of failure, even though failure is not in and of itself a bad thing, but definitely it's a big fear for a lot of people.
Okay. Okay, that's a good point that you did brought up. Being ridiculed by other people. I think that's a huge part, especially as youth in today's generation. We focus on what people are going to say or what people think about us, especially when we say we want to do something and we don't do it. We pay so much attention to what people are going to think because we didn't do it. So that's a really good point that you did brought up. Let's hear of what others have to say about that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Okay. So I think that fear actually kind of like breeds a lot of suffering because it's just like you want to do something, but something is stopping you so bad that you don't know what it is, but it's just something stopping you, and sometimes it makes you suffer because you feel like you're not where you want to be, but then again you're scared, you're scared because you don't know what steps to even take to get to where you want to be, and that could also be fear, and it kind of like breeds a lot of evil things. That's all I can say about fear.
Oh, okay. When you do say fear breeds evil things, what can you elaborate on that?
um okay, let's say, for example, I'll probably use me as an example. Let's say that you went through like a heartbreak, right? And now you fear that your next relationship, that person might also do you wrong. So it's just like you have some type of anger or like hate, and that anger or hate could be something evil. You not being able to trust someone could be somewhat evil, but not too evil. I just didn't know what word to use, but it's not a good thing. But maybe evil is not the word, but something along those lines, if it makes sense.
Oh, okay. I think it makes more sense now. It makes more sense now. Uh, so when we look at fear, what advantages can we say? Does fear has its own advantages?
I think I think yeah, because it makes you careful about things or situations, because sometimes you fear to approach a certain type of situation and things happen and you're just like, oh my god, I'm so glad that I feared to actually take a step to do this, because it would have turned out like that way. So sometimes it does have advantages, but I wouldn't say it's a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, please come on.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, yeah, I agree with what Esther said. I think when you're stepping out into any new venture, I think a little bit of fear is a good thing because I don't know. I think for me personally, like it makes me show up a little bit more. Like I give it my 110% just because there's that little bit of fear. Whereas I feel like maybe if I walked into something like 100% confident, I maybe wouldn't show up as much or give it as much effort as I could. So I
Mhm.
definitely think a little bit of fear when you're like stepping into something or starting something is good because it just makes you work a little bit harder.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think fear in itself, it's part of the way we express ourselves as humans. It can be good, it can be bad, depending on the situation. So, for instance, when you are afraid, it makes you aware of what is going on. It makes you be able to analyze carefully the situation because you are afraid. So when you are afraid, you are less able to, let's say, take a risky decision because of how prepared you are based on the analysis that you're doing, based on you being consistent, based on you just having the thought that you are afraid. It makes you so aware of your surroundings. You keep track of everything that is going on. Imagine sitting in a room watching a scary movie all by yourself. It's very quiet, but the moment anything goes off, a small sound goes off, you pay attention to that sound. So fear in itself, it's a natural form, it's a natural way that we express ourselves as humans. I think there's the whole concept of when you approach something that you are afraid of, do you fight it or do you flight from it? So fear in itself, I think it's a good thing depending on the situation. But let's hear what other opinions there are concerning fear.
So let me chime in here. I agree with what you just said, Sam, with regards to the cautiousness that fear brings with it, right? Because there are certain situations that if the fear, if a sliver of fear does not come in your heart, you might not take caution and analyze it from both angles, right? And sometimes too, and I mean it's a double-edged sword. So there are other times too where you might overanalyze due to the fact that there's a little bit of fear in you, and that analysis or might be what causes you not to be able to, make that move that you need to. But also, when when the fear does come in or takes place, in my opinion, a little bit of fear is good, but I don't know if it's fear or just I guess my question to you is, would you consider being cautious fear?
I would say, like for me personally, I would say yes.
Okay. I mean, if you would consider it fear, cautiousness, fear, then I mean, I feel like everybody has a little bit of fear in them, and it's actually a good thing versus a negative thing. But like we always say, too much of everything is bad.
It's definitely bad. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So one thing about fear also is that it can either motivate you to do something or motivate you not to do something. For instance, when you set up an ambition for yourself, you may be so afraid that you don't want to fail pursuing that ambition, and that drive itself can keep you going. On the other hand, you may be so afraid to pursue that ambition, and you may not even pursue it in the first place because you're afraid to pursue it. So depending on the situation, as I said, we all interpret fear in different ways. But on a larger scale, I think fear is a good thing because it makes you very cautious of your steps. I think Debbie did mention something about, I don't know if it was Debbie or I think it was Debbie. She did mention something about the, I forgot what word she used. The shame factor of fear. How how does that play into our lives, especially in this generation where things are constantly changing, and as a result of that, a lot of us tend to change our ambitions from time to time on. How does that shame influence us not to even pursue whatever thing that we've set for ourselves in the first place?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
oh, okay. I was just gonna say very quickly, like it genuinely makes me so happy when I see people my age, sort of our generation, who are pursuing, especially Ghanaians and other Africans, pursuing non-traditional jobs or roles, like people who are in the arts, people who are in the humanities, because I feel like very often, and I think this is a whole other conversation, but like our generation, we feel like a lot of pressure to go into medicine, law, architecture, the main sort of secure jobs and roles. And so sometimes like people can have this burning passion to do something that's a little bit more risky, a little bit more unsure, like be an artist, but they're scared of failure, not being able to like make ends meet, and then ridicule in that, which is what I was saying earlier. Like, okay, your parents are like, great, you want to be an artist, be an artist. You go out, you quote unquote fail, and then they're like, well, see, this is why we told you you should go into medicine. This is why we told you to go into law, X, Y, and Z. And so I think for a lot of people in our generation, that fear can definitely hold people back from like pursuing the path that they actually want to be in. And so it makes me happy when I see people overcome that fear and actually pursue that path, even if it doesn't, necessarily make them quote unquote successful in like society's eyes. That was a lot, but I hope that made sense.
That definitely makes sense. You did brought up a point that I think I share the same view when I see people, especially Ghanaians, going into different areas other than law, medicine, engineering, other than these areas. It makes me feel proud, that whole diversity that it brings to the generation. It makes me feel proud of that. I think Bro Simon wanted to say something, so please come in, Bro Simon.
So what I was going to say, and is, from the other side too, right? The fact that you mentioned this generation is moving. I mean, we live in a very fast-paced society now, and also I feel like fear plays a role in that, in terms of, if you do hesitate, right? If you let fear consume you and you hesitate, you might miss that opportunity to, take action on something, right? And so I hope it's along the line of when you mentioned the fame of it. Am I heading in the right direction as you were leading towards to, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, the fact that we live in such a fast-paced society, if you do hesitate, you can, hesitation can cause you to miss the opportunities and miss those, miss the ability to keep up with the fast-pacedness of the society now.
Okay. So I have this question. Is fear self-induced?
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's based on experience. So it could not be, and when I say experience, it's not only your own experience, but it could be the experience of others, right? And based on what others are saying or sharing with you is what's causing you to have that fear. So I would say not always. Sometimes it is, but not always.
Okay. And let's say, as you did mention, sometimes, if fear is self-induced, sometimes, how do we overcome that? Let's say somebody shares their experience with you, and because of that, you feel like the fact that the person encountered fear in that experience, you feel like you're also going to do the same thing. In that instance, how do you overcome fear?
From my perspective, I mean, one, since it's somebody's experience that's inducing that fear, you can have your own experience to, by taking that chance is how you overcome that fear. For starters, right? I mean, you have to take the chance. It's a risk that you're going to take, and that risk is what's going to either result in, you either overcoming the fear or fulfilling that fear, right? Fulfilling that fear in terms of what you thought the results were going to be to begin with. And so it takes, chance. It's all by chance. And I mean, I don't know if we're going to go scripture here or not, but I believe it takes God for one, and prayers that's going to take you there. But if we're going from it from a logical standpoint, it has to be a chance that you're willing to take.
Okay.
I have a question. Is it possible for someone to kind of like connect like fear and being nervous, or like the human nervous system together? Because I feel like sometimes, I don't know if there's a difference or if they both tie into the same thing, but maybe like medically or anything, if someone can tie those and make it connect to actually explain something.
Okay, so if I did understand that correctly, you're asking if there's a difference between being afraid and being nervous.
Correct.
Okay. Please, what do you think? Does fear means to be nervous, or does being nervous means to be afraid? What do you think?
So I don't think being I was gonna say, you know, not all nervousness is based in fear. I think in certain situations, yes, it can, but you can be like excited nervous, like if you're about to get married, if you're about to like walk across the stage at graduation. Like I think that's based out of more excitement and just like, you know, can't believe that what the day's here, whatever. But then of course I think there are some instances where because you are afraid, I don't think it goes in the reverse. Like I don't think nervousness leads to fear. I think fear leads to nervousness sometimes. um yeah, I hope that made sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, scriptures. I just saw your, did I explain it or did you want me to explain some more?
I think
My,
you explain more because I didn't understand.
oh, okay. Um, I I think you can have you know, ex nervous excitement, nervousness, however you want to say it. Like if I don't know, I just give an example for like graduation. I think like I mean, yeah, I think you can be nervous. Like you're just so excited, you don't want anything to go wrong. And that's not necessarily, for me at least, I don't see that as being based in fear. I just see it as like you're just so excited this day has come. Like it's time to walk across the stage. I'm really excited. Like I don't want to trip. Like I just want to get my diploma. But I'm not necessarily scared of graduating per se. Does that make sense? If someone else has an example and
It
knows what I'm
does, but
talking about.
Deb, it does, Deb. But I want to take it from the other side, right? I
Okay.
feel like it's, that nervousness or anxiousness can also root from fear because, like, using the same example you just did, you've worked all these years to, you know, check all the boxes for graduation. Now your hopes and prayers that everything just completes in peace and all that. So there could be a fear of, you know, all the work that you've done still to a degree, whether you slip on the stage or whatever it is, it's just that fear of not completing it or bringing everything to a completion as you would or as you could. And so I think that can even be a hint of fear in that anxiousness or nervousness.
Okay, that's both are good ways to look at it. I think fear and being nervous are similar in the sense that they are both related to either a psychological response or a physical response. I read an article about fear, and the authors did mention that being anxious is usually a response to an unknown factor, whereas being afraid is focused more on something that we are aware of, something that we know, more of an external danger. For instance, you may be anxious of going to school, or you may be anxious of taking a class. In this case, you haven't taken the class yet. You don't know what the class really entails, but yet still you are anxious of taking that class. You are not afraid, you're just anxious of it. Whereas in terms of fear, you may be in the class, but you are afraid of failing the class. So these were the main differences that the author came of, that being anxious means uh, not being able to respond to a threat that is not known or an internal conflict that you are not aware of. Whereas fear is more focused on something external, something that you can or you are aware of. Brother Jevin, does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, it does.
Okay.
But I kind of like the way what's the name? I think Deb couple explained that. I think I get it from that angle too.
Okay, that's very good. So let's look at fear in this current situation that we all find ourselves in this pandemic. Every year or close to the end of the year, we set resolutions for ourselves for the upcoming year. In 2019, I'm sure a lot of us had resolutions that we wanted to pursue in the year 2020. And then this pandemic came in. How did that influence your decision to pursue the resolution that you had?
Very good.
Sister Beatrice, please come again.
Wait, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Like, I said very greatly. Like, I had like resolutions in 2019. And then when the pandemic started, like, because of like motivation and stuff, it just influenced the amount of stuff that I wanted to do. So, like, you just become lazy and like you just put stuff to like last minute and you're like, I'm gonna do it, but you end up not doing it, or you end up doing it, but it's like towards the end.
So in your instance, did you end up doing it, or you're still waiting to do it towards the end?
For me, I feel like I didn't accomplish a lot I wanted to accomplish last year.
Okay. Was it
Yeah.
because of the pandemic?
Was it because of the pandemic? Half.
Okay. Let's not go into explaining it.
Yeah.
But does anybody has anything to share or how the pandemic influenced their resolutions, whether the pandemic served as a fear factor to not pursue your resolutions, or it served as a factor for you to pursue your ambitions or your resolutions in that case?
So I'll take it from again, two-tier, take it from both sides, right? So one, I saw a lot of opportunities from the pandemic, and so, the fear of, just the virus and whatnot helped boost other areas in my life whereby I was able to, get better at some of my goals and my resolutions, right?
Mhm.
And so from that standpoint and that aspect, it was like positive fear, right?
Mhm.
Also, from another standpoint, and with respect to some of the more outdoorsy or adventurous um, goals and resolutions I had, I couldn't accomplish them due to the pandemic, right? Because society was limited, right? In terms of environmental, like being able to move around freely, that limitation was placed on us by not only the government but by the virus, to be honest. So that also impacted some of the resolutions and some of the goals that I did have to want to accomplish in the previous year and also so far this year.
Okay. I think you mentioned something that I I had the same thing going on. So I also saw a lot of opportunities with this pandemic going on. Instead of focusing more on what not to do because of the pandemic, I focused on what can I do in terms of this pandemic going on. So I would say that was a positive fear for me. But on the other hand, I was also afraid for uh, for other people around me. For instance, my mom, whenever I would come home from work, my mom wouldn't want to get close to me. And as a matter of that, she wouldn't want my siblings to be getting close to me because she just came from the hospital. We don't
Ale,
want to we don't want to bring any virus here. So usually prior to the pandemic, whenever I come from work, I'd come in through the front door. Because of the pandemic, my mom would make me come through the garage. So from her point of view, she was very much afraid of the virus. Whereas from my point of view, I was very much afraid of transferring it, or if I was very much afraid of, do I have it versus do I not have it? And if I do have it, am I going to transfer it onto or transmit it to other people? So that was my fear factor. Anybody else? How did the pandemic, or how has the pandemic shaped your resolutions that you had for the previous years?
So I'm gonna try my best to talk about this without actually saying what it is. It will all be revealed in due time. But last year I had a resolution, and COVID, but it was an unsure time for a lot of people that were going through the same process as me, the same sort of resolution or goal, because we just didn't know how it would affect the timing of everything, so forth and so on. And I decided, after talking with some people, I decided that, you know what, I am prepared enough for this, that I'm going to like step out in faith and just trust that if this is for me, like it'll all work out. So I accomplished that resolution or goal. And so I think, having done that in the midst of the pandemic this year, I sort of have that to fall back on, to say, like, you know, that worked out last time, like continue to dream big and pursue the resolution. Sure, it worked out last time. It may not work out, you know, this year, but I'm still going to try. Um, I'm not going to let the circumstances and the uncertainty of it stop me. I'm just going to try my best and see what happens. So for me, it turned out really well on my resolution. And so I'm going to keep that same energy in 2021.
I'm glad it did turn out well. I believe that the greatest failure is the failure to try. So whether fear is there, or whether whatever thing you have going on, just give something a try. Whatever resolutions that you had for yourself, just give it a try. Being afraid, it's natural. The fact that you're afraid doesn't mean you are less significant than anyone. Just push the fears aside and give it a try. You never know. So I'm glad you didn't give up, and you chose to do what you chose to pursue that resolution. That's good. Was anyone
Wait, I have
saying
a question. I haven't been here for long, so I just have a question. How can you like not let fear like completely consume you? Because like I feel like sometimes I let fear consume me so much that like I don't go for what I want. So how do I stop fear from consuming me?
The floor is open? Does anyone want to answer that or share an opinion on that? How do you not allow fear to consume you?
So one time I think we were talking about it, and I shared an example where I was supposed to go pick someone for our meeting, and then I almost had an accident. I mean, it was just by the grace of God that I didn't get. And when I picked them to the church, I didn't talk because it won't bomb me. So then right after the meeting, I told one of my friends he should just park his car and just go drop them. And then I wasn't gonna drive. I'll just I'll just be in the car, and just he'll drive back to church, and he'll pick his car and go home. So I came home, and I was so scared because that was my first time in such situation. And I would say at that moment, that was when I was learning how to drive as well. So you know what? I was so scared that I didn't want it to drive again. But it turned out that I couldn't do anything without driving. I have to drive a lot because maybe Abukobia, you have to drive.
Mhm.
So what actually helped me was me driving a lot helped me to go out with the fear. So I believe that whatever fear that you have, you are afraid of, do it. For example, if you're afraid of uh, taking an airplane or taking whatever, Charlie, go do it. You doing that will give you a sense of motivation, a sense of comfort, saying that, oh, after all, this thing that I was afraid, oh, it's just nothing. That's my take on that. Thank you.
Bro,
Okay.
it's so funny how you used the airplane as an example. I recently had an experience. Even Brad Sammy knows about it. So
Okay,
thank you.
our sister has asked the question. Let's hear. How do you avoid fear
So
consuming you? Okay, come on.
so what I was going to add is, and I'm glad you used that, the drive-in experience, or that drive-in as the lesson. And I feel like that's one of the biggest common fears, right? When you're a new driver and whatnot. Also, your point is accurate. I agree with it. Only thing I'll add to it is that, sometimes you do need somebody that you trust to be able to help you overcome that fear. It's not always that you have to overcome the fear on your own. So, for
Mhm.
example, let's say it's the driving, right? And you had a near death experience, and so because of that, you don't want to drive anymore. You might need a third party to sit next to you and be in a car with you and give you that source of encouragement and say, hey, let's go. I'm gonna be right here with you, and that can be that source of overcoming that fear. And so I would say, I mean, yes, you can overcome it on your own, but you don't have to. And sometimes when you do know that you don't have to, that alone gives you that courage to try and overcome it. So that's what I wanted to add to.
Definitely, that's so true. Sometimes we feel like we are experiencing fear, so we have to deal with it all alone. We forget that we have people around us. I mean, not all friends or all people around you can be trusted in that essence, but we forget the fact that we have people around us who can help us overcome that fear. And I think one way to overcome fear is to do what is in contradiction to that fear. In the academic setting, if you're afraid of failing a class, do what is in contradiction to that failure. Study hard, go to class, ask questions. So using the driving example, I am not afraid of getting into an accident. I am more afraid of being pulled over than getting into an accident, especially in this generation where by the time the police stops you, they already have their hands on their pistols. So that is my fear factor. I see accidents as, so far as I'm driving, it's unavoidable. Regardless of how good of a driver you are, you don't know the driving skill of the next driver to you, or the car behind you, or the car ahead of you. So you being careful doesn't take away the accident, but rather you being careful doesn't take away the accident. It's just a way for you to acknowledge the fact that getting into an accident is unavoidable. So that's what I think. Does anyone have anything different to add? Any?
No, I'll just back up what Ofusu said. That in my case, it's boys light. So my friend laughed at me, right? But he encouraged me. Was like, hey, Charlie, this is just one of those things, and you overcome it if you allow yourself to allow someone else to help you overcome your fear. Because in my case, my friend helped me a lot. He encouraged me. He was like, Charlie, things happen. And he told me he shared certain experience that he also had. And I mean, I felt comforted. So sometimes you allowing a friend or someone you can trust help you to overcome your fear helps.
Or even just talking about it to other people. The more you absorb fear into you, the more you become afraid. Just talk about it. Hear what other people have to say, whether they have similar experiences and what you can learn from that. I think that also gets you through overcoming fear.
I just want to add one thing. So one thing that just came into my mind, I think there's a quote that says, I think face your fears and rise or something and run. I don't remember the whole thing. So what I get from this is that you can either face it and then in the end it's like you overcame something, you achieved something. Or you look at the other side, you end up not doing anything, and then like you've lost, not like you've lost something, no, but then like yes, like you've lost something. So we can either face, because when you, I mean, if it's a fear and you're able to overcome it, like with the driving like that, right now, I'm sure say your fear about him or something. Right now, you're not even
Of
really
course,
afraid of it
I'm
again.
not even
Because
afraid of what will happen.
yes, please. So you have to freeze if it's an exam, if it's a test, if it's something that you want to pursue, if it's a business. Like what if you can't fail, but oh failure, there's always a second chance. You get it. You can always do it again. So like when you're able to overcome that fear, it helps you to rise. So think of it, say me, yeah, like there's an advantage, there's a disadvantage. Say me, yeah, it's gonna push me like a step ahead in life. But then if I don't do it, you're still going to be wherever you are. Like, I mean, nothing is going to change because you're afraid of doing it. But if you do it, you try again, and then maybe you succeed the next time. Yeah.
Right. Just do it. Even if you don't succeed, at least you've gained the experience of it. So just I'd rather do it than not do it. I'd rather have myself in 10 years time saying thank you for doing the things that I did rather than not doing the things that I chose not to do because of fear. So whether you have fear or not, just give it a try. If it fails, you've learned something from it. If you succeed, you've learned something from it. Once again, the greatest harm that you can do to yourself is the failure to try. So just give give whatever resolution or whatever ambition you have for yourself, just give it a try and keep going. Was something coming in? I think I heard. Sister Beatrice, are you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say thank you everyone for the advice. I've noted it and I will take it into place and use it in my life. Thank you.
So do you want to share with us your airplane experience and how you overcame that fear?
Sure. Okay, so I was gonna travel to Miami in December, and like I was okay because like I've been planning this trip since like I was supposed to go in March of last year, but I ended up rescheduling to December, and so like I was okay, I was doing okay, and then like a couple like weeks before like the trip, I was so terrified. I almost canceled the trip because like I'm like all my life I've been afraid of planes. Like no joke. I hate planes. I never sat next to the windows, and even when I go on a plane, I sit in the middle seat and I have my eyes closed and I'm holding my mom's hands or someone's hands because I just don't want to experience stuff like being lifted off. So this time before we were going, I was so scared. I talked to Brother Sami about this. I talked to like two other people about this, and they encouraged me to go, and they gave me some Bible verses which encouraged me. And so when we sat on the plane, by God's grace, I wasn't scared. I sat on the plane and it lifted off. I wasn't even panicking. I was just laughing when the plane lifted off. And then when we were coming back, I decided to sit. I got the window seat, and I even like opened the windows so I can look outside for the plane to lift off. So I was like, wow, look at me.
And
I
you
almost,
even wanted to jump out.
yeah. I almost canceled the trip because of fear. So yeah.
I'm glad you made it back safe.
Yes. So
But I think when we spoke on the phone, one thing that I did mention was the effect of fear on the people around us.
yeah.
For instance, imagine going on an airplane as a passenger and then you being afraid, telling the pilot that you are afraid. Automatically in his or her mind, they also become afraid. Why? Because you have your life in their hands at that moment. So you being the passenger, if you are afraid, how much more the person taking you to the destination that you want to go to? Now they have to be careful. They have to probably think about getting you safely there. They also have to think about what if they don't get you safely, the image that the airline company is going to have. So they think about all these things. So fear also doesn't affect just us, it also affects the people around us and how we portray it to them. So I'm glad you made it back safe and you're still planning your second trip. That's good.
Yes. So thank you.
Anything else to add from anyone? Okay, our time is nearly up. I want to take this moment to thank you all for being part of today's session. It's been a great session. I always learn something uh, from each and every one of you. So that's good. Thank you for that. I pray that God continue to bless you with the wisdom that you share. And we will meet next week. Next week, we'll talk about obstacles in general, whether in academics, in business, in life, in relationships, just obstacles, dealing with obstacles, overcoming obstacles, and just gaining the experience of facing an obstacle. So I want to thank all of you. The podcast will be up tomorrow. Once again, thank all of you and have a blessed week. I will see you next week, same time. Thank you.
God bless you.
Ready to be